by ICE is allowed to stop anybody, round anybody up, legal or illegal. They outlined 4 factors. One was, does the person look Latino? Not even is Latino, do they just look Latino, right? 2, do they speak English with a Spanish accent, or do they speak Spanish, right? So if you now look Latino and you speak Spanish, you can be rounded up by ICE. And what's wild, and I saw our friend Jamel Hill make this point, Roland, this is the same Supreme Court that says you cannot look at race when it comes to college admissions, right? So you can't look at race when it comes to whether or not you're allowed to go to college, but you can look at race when it comes to whether or not you have to go to jail or get deported from the country, right? It is absolutely insane to me. The other thing here that Kavanaugh did that I find so, I'm trying to find the nice word to it. It's the whitest thing possible, right? Is how Brett Kavanaugh described what it is to be stopped by ICE. He said it was a usually very brief, polite, and prompt conversation where if you're a legal person, if you're a legal immigrant or legally a U.S. citizen or just happen to be born here, where you're allowed to walk free after simply proving to ICE's satisfaction that you're a citizen, right? And of course, from Brett Kavanaugh's white-ass perspective, I'm sure that's what he thinks. But I bet, Roland, Brett Kavanaugh would react differently if the question was, hey, Brett, there have been a lot of rapes in this area, so we're just rounding up all the white guys to see if they committed any of these rapes. Hey, Brett, do you have a calendar perhaps that you could show that proves that you didn't commit any of these rapes? I bet Brett Kavanaugh would feel a lot differently if that's what the government was doing instead of simply racially profiling Latino Americans.
And of course, you've got the resident Negro, Clarence Thomas, agreed with it. Alito, John Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, Sam Alito. And I mean, yeah, they've co-signed racism.
Boy. So we got to talk about Morning Joe once again. Earlier today, we talked about Joe Scarborough showing some signs of common sense when it comes to the issue of crime, right? He has not allowed black liberals to come on his show and to basically boo-hoo on and cry racism over the proposed crime crackdown from President Trump. However, that doesn't mean that this show is a show that actually is grounded in common sense on all issues, because on the issue of illegal immigration, you still have these people boo-hoo on and crying racism, right? You can't cry racism when it comes to illegal immigration. In fact, the whole network, MSDNC, they're pushing this narrative that the ICE raids are racist and that the Supreme Court just allowed racist ICE raids because the Supreme Court gave the okay for the Trump administration to continue their ICE raids in California, in which liberals claim, again, these ICE raids are being done using racial profiling. Now, MSDNC tried to find individuals who allegedly were subject to these racist ICE raids.
My next guest represents 6 people, including 5 U.S. citizens who say they were racially profiled when detained during immigration raids in California. Our local LA station spoke to a few of them, including a woman who was arrested while she was 9 months pregnant.
She went into premature labor and gave birth to her little girl just 2 days later. Agents never filed charges.
Everything that's happening gets me emotional.
They throw me. They start hitting me.
Juan Rivas was arrested and detained at a Home Depot despite being a permanent resident.
That's when one of the agents just literally pointed at me and said, you know what, just get him. He's Mexican.
Joining me now, the civil rights attorney on the case, Luis Carrillo. He is a partner at the Carrillo law firm. So it's good to have you here. Tom Homan says ICE is doing everything right. Tell me what you're saying.
Well, actually, Tom Homan is not telling the truth, because the ICE agents and Border Patrol officers are racially profiling. We now have 7 U.S. citizens who were arrested or beaten up and arrested because of the tactics of the ICE and Border Patrol officers. In other words, they see a person with a brown skin, and for them, that's a reasonable suspicion. So Tom Homan lies when he talks about that they are going through protocols and they're targeting he's not telling the truth, just like Kristi Noem is not telling the truth when she said, don't ever say that again about racial profiling. Don't you use those words, she said in Nashville, Tennessee. The reality is that now U.S. citizens with brown skins are going to be harassed, arrested, and thrown to the ground.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, now there is no evidence. There's zero evidence that any of those individuals were detained because they are Latino, because they speak Spanish, or any of the things these people are talking about. Okay, what these people are trying to confuse the American people on is the fact that the Supreme Court did not rule that you can detain somebody because they look Mexican, right? Or they look Latino, or they speak Spanish. It's not what they said. What they said is that you can use a variety of factors, including race, to help identify an individual who, again, may be in the country illegally, right? What that means, for example, is that if they're looking for a specific individual that is, for example, a dangerous criminal, and we know that he's in the country illegally, if there happens to be somebody that looks like that individual, that looks like they might be that suspect, okay, and it just so happens they fit the description, the racial description of the subject, along with other factors as well too, then yes, that can be used as a reasonable suspicion to detain somebody. Again, it doesn't mean that they're just pulling over and detaining random Latinos just because they're Latino or because they speak Spanish. That's not what's happening. But if you listen to the mainstream liberal media, they will try to make you believe that that's what's happening, okay? And that brings me to this interview on MSDNC earlier this morning featuring Mika Brzezinski, who is going to confront Tom Homan, the Border Czar, over the allegedly racist ICE raids. And let's just say that Tom Homan did not come to play games with MSDNC. He had all the smoke for MSDNC this morning. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
I appreciate what you're saying. I think you did answer my question. I mean, you said that if someone is here illegally, they're a criminal. So I just want to know, what is the data you have beyond that? For example, I was giving you an example of a parent of someone who served in this country. If that person is trying so hard to get their papers straight, especially now, because you're in charge and Trump is in charge and they're going to clean up the border and make this country safe and make sure that people are legal who are here in the United States. I understand that. Donald Trump won the election in part because of this part of his campaign. I'm not arguing it. I just want to know what ICE agents out in the field right now, what they consider to be a criminal. Is that someone who has committed a crime like robbed a store? Or what about Narcisco Barranco, the father of 3 Marines who was cutting bushes at an IHOP before they took him off the street? I want to know. I want to know the data that you say you have about 70% of these people. Show it to us.
You send me the specifics of that case, and I'll run down what the specifics of that case are. You may not know all the facts around that case.
I may not. I certainly don't. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, let me tell you, look, right now I see on the show this morning you have Governor Healy talking about ICE doing enforcement operations at a church. Mm-hmm. False. Didn't happen.
They were parked there. They did not do an operation there. She said they were parked in a public space legally.
But to say that and to push that out there puts fear in the immigrant community. So let me tell you what's happening.
That puts fear in the community. Right. To park the ICE agent's vehicle
they're on a
near
public
a church.
Street.
They are on a public
street.
She said
they're on a public street,
sir.
waiting to respond to a criminal alien release pulled aside the road. Let me tell you, in the last couple of days, what's happened in Boston.
She's so pissed. Boy, she is heated. She is heated because Tom Homan, what he did is that he basically just called out the BS that they spew on MSDNC, how they don't tell the whole story. Well, ICE was at a church, right? When the real story is that ICE was on a public road. They weren't at a church. They were on a public road waiting to pull over the illegal immigrant, which is, again, is 100% allowed, right? You can wait on a public road. It might be near a church. The person they're targeting might be at church, but they're not in church. Those are two different things. But again, that's not the narrative that MSDNC was pushing. And now she's embarrassed because he called her out on this BS, right? On the lies being spewed on this network. See, and again, this is why I showed you guys that video before of all these people. Oh, they said I look Mexican, and then they arrested me. And it's like, none of that that's never the full story. Any other stories that you hear on MSNBC, it's never the full story. It's always a half story, right? It's a lie, right? A lot of it is a lie, okay? They don't tell you the full story because they tell you the full story. Oh, wait. ICE was actually on a public road? They weren't at a church. That changes it, right? That changes it. Not as controversial anymore, right?
Arrested Victor Gomez Perez, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Guatemala with charges of aggravated rape, assault and battery with dangerous weapon, indecent assault and battery on a victim 14 years or younger. They arrested Kaylee Espinosa, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Colombia with charges of aggravated assault on a pregnant victim. They arrested Joshua Gonzalez, a 24-year-old criminal alien from Dominican Republic with charges for trafficking heroin, morphine, opium, resisting police, disorderly conduct, and drug distribution. They also arrested Samuel Armando Barrero, a 20-year-old criminal illegal alien from Guatemala pending charges for assault and battery on a child. So Mayor Wu and Governor Healy, they ought to be calling ICE and thanking them for making their streets safer, for protecting their communities and taking these people off the street. They have turned a blind eye to this. They're sanctuary cities. Sanctuaries, cities and sanctuary states are sanctuaries for criminals. Give ICE access to the jail to arrest a bad guy in the jail rather than have to go in the community to find them. Because when you go in the community and find them, it puts ICE officers at greater risk. It puts the community at greater risk. It puts the alien at greater risk because anything can happen on a street arrest. This is what.
You know, the crazy part about all this is that Tom Homan been saying the same thing from day one. Before Trump got into office, Tom Homan been saying the same thing. Give us access to the jails, and none of this happens. Give us access to the criminals, and we don't have to do this. We don't have to do any of this. That's the crazy part about it. These people are complaining about something that they signed up for. Because ultimately, they want the illegals to stay. They want ICE to fold. They want ICE to throw their hands up and say, well, sanctuary city, so I guess we're not going to enforce illegal immigration, right? We're not going to do that. And then, you know, they just go say, forget about it. Like the Biden administration did. That's what they want. Because, again, if you really want the criminals out of the country, then these people should be vouching for these cities to get rid of their sanctuary city policies. Because, again, we're all supposed to agree, well, we want the criminals out. If we agree with that, then why are you not coming out against the sanctuary cities? He already told you 1,000 times how to make it stop, right? How to make the raids stop. They told you 1,000 times, but Democrats refuse to comply. And because they refuse to comply, they're being held accountable. It's really that simple.
What we're trying to do, we're trying to prioritize public safety threats. When you got governors and mayors who are releasing these public safety threats every day into the community, that causes the crime rate, and we've seen some terrible incidents in the last few days where innocent victims are murdered. This past year, I've seen innocent Americans raped and murdered by people who are not supposed to be here. So rather than going back and forth, say, well, ICE has got a car parked near a church, that is ridiculous. You're out there looking for people like this, exactly what they're doing.
Well, I would argue that actually that the ICE vehicle parked outside a Spanish mass is a frightening sight, given what has happened in this country. I also, with respect, sir, thank you for the information that you have shared on this show, but we would appreciate all of the information. All of it. All of the data that you say you have.
I've done this show several times. Every time on your show, I speak with integrity, I speak with honesty, and I speak with facts. The bottom line is, because of all this false narrative, and you using the term disappearing people,
well,
that's
what's happened. That happened to the group that was sent to El Salvador.
U.S. citizens get arrested every day. U.S. citizens get arrested by police every day. Are they being disappeared? No, their laws are being enforced. They're being arrested. They're being put in detention because they committed a criminal offense.
Not like what you're doing. Not even close.
We're enforcing the law and arresting people here in violation of law that are public safety threats. That's not disappearing people. That's enforcing the laws of this country and making this country safer.
I thank you very much for explaining what ICE considers to be a danger and a criminal threat. Everybody understands the reality, and we appreciate your sharing that reality with us, and we would love the data. Border Czar for the Trump administration, Tom Homan, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
You got it.
Yeah. Boy, she was pissed, right? She was pissed, okay? Tom Homan set her straight. He called her out on the BS, right, on the hoax. I showed up to a church, a Hispanic mass. They were inside the church. They were arresting illegals while they were praying, right? That's what they try to put out there. But Tom Homan called him out on the bullshit, right? Called him out. Said, nah, that's BS. They're on a public road, okay? Public road. What are you talking about? They weren't at the church. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? So, yeah, she didn't like getting called out, right? She didn't like getting exposed like that. But again, it just shows you what this network is all about, right? The fact that she got so angry with Tom Homan for, calling out her nonsense, it shows you that he went up there and he said a lot of stuff that the audience doesn't usually hear, right? About how dangerous these people are and what's actually happening. So with that being said, again, the fact of the matter is this. The law has to be enforced, okay? The illegals have to be deported. And these people can boo-hoo, whine, and cry racism all they want, but it's not going to change anything, right? What ICE is doing is legal, okay? They're not racially profiling, right? They're doing their jobs. A lot of these people who are ICE agents, they're Hispanic. If you notice, pay attention to the race and ethnicity of the ICE agents. A lot of them are Hispanic, which makes sense because a lot of illegals in the country are Hispanic. So you need Spanish speakers, right? You need people that can relate. That can identify a Hispanic or Latino that's here legally versus illegally, right? I'm sure Latinos, they're the best. They're the best at spotting that, right? They're the best. They know, okay? So I'm just saying, okay? I mean, the people who are making the arrest, a lot of them are Latino men, okay? And you try to tell me that these Latino men are racist, right? They're racist. They're racially profiling. I don't know. I just think that, again, a lot of this is just an attempt to stop the Trump administration from enforcing our laws at all, right? And that's the sad part about it. They just don't believe that this law should be enforced. They just believe in open borders, right? That these people should stay. Amnesty. It doesn't matter if they're violent criminals or if, they haven't committed any crimes outside of crossing the border. They don't care. They want all of them to stay. And that's the reality of the situation. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.